People who vanished after crossing CIA interests in the quiet corners of American history, there are stories that were never allowed to breathe. They concern people who walked too close to the invisible borders of a powerful intelligence empire. These borders did not exist on maps, yet they shaped destinies more brutally than any marked frontier. Those who crossed them did not find punishment or justice, but silence, a silence so heavy it erased them. Their names faded from public record, leaving only rumors, fragments, and the anxious whispers of witnesses. The earliest known case dates back to the 1950s, when the Central Intelligence Agency was still young. A researcher from the Midwest vanished after discovering files related to early covert biochemical trials. He had confided to a colleague that he saw something he called a national ghost, a truth too large to hold. Within a single week he was gone, his apartment emptied, his mail redirected, his memory scrubbed clean. His family was told he joined a classified mission overseas, though no such mission ever existed at all. Throughout the Cold War, these disappearances multiplied slowly but steadily, like shadows lengthening at dusk. Journalists vanished after tracing aircraft linked to black operations from Nevada to foreign conflict zones. Activists disappeared after challenging secret funding streams hidden behind charitable organizations. What united them was not ideology but proximity, the simple act of stepping too near a forbidden pattern. The agency did not always silence through violence. Sometimes erasure was crafted with bureaucratic precision. One case from the 70s tells of a young historian researching covert coups in distant island nations. He found names that aligned too perfectly with declassified hints, like puzzle pieces forming forbidden truth. On the night he was to publish his findings, his car was discovered near a river with keys still in the seat. The authorities called it an accident, though no tire tracks, no struggle, and no footprints were ever found. To this day, only his unfinished manuscript survives, cut mid-sentence, like a breath stolen from the page. By the late 20th century, these vanishings became quieter, executed with the elegance of modern secrecy. Digital records were rewritten, bank accounts evaporated, and public traces dissolved into bureaucratic mist. Friends of the missing learned that asking questions brought unmarked vehicles in late-night phone calls. Families filed reports, yet officials claimed no such individuals existed, as if memory itself were compromised. Some believed these people fled voluntarily, but witnesses insisted the truth was more chilling and deliberate. The pattern, though subtle, was unmistakable. Each disappearance intersected with the agency's shadow agenda. Not official missions, but the covert edges where ideology and ambition merged with unchecked authority. The disappeared left behind echoes, unfinished letters, frightened messages, or sudden changes in demeanor. It was as if they sensed the approach of something unseen, a force wrapped in legal secrecy and moral twilight. And in that twilight, they were swallowed, their stories absorbed into the machinery of American intelligence. The chapter of Vanished Lives is not folklore, nor conspiracy, but a historical pattern shaped in darkness. It persists because no institution punishes secrets more fiercely than one built entirely upon them. And those who crossed the hidden interest lines of the Central Intelligence Agency paid with their existence. Their absence became the quiet testimony of a system that believed silence was its most effective weapon. Their stories now return, piece by piece, as we trace the borders of a map drawn in fear, shadows, and truth. The trail of the disappeared was faint, but careful historians noticed a rhythm behind the vanishing. It began like a quiet pulse inside the nation's archives, an irregular beat hinting at hidden machinery. Files related to foreign coups went missing not once, but in patterns too precise to be accidental. Witness testimonies shifted wording over the years, as if rewritten by unseen hands shaping memory. To study these patterns was to sense a presence watching, an intelligence older than official documents. One archivist from the Eastern Seaboard detected this rhythm while reviewing restricted Cold War papers. He saw identical redactions repeated across unrelated regions, like a signature of an invisible editor. Curious, he requested original microfilm stored in a vault that few had entered since the 1960s. Within a fortnight, he told a close friend he felt followed, describing dark sedans appearing repeatedly. On the eve of his planned testimony to Congress, he vanished, leaving only a badge on his kitchen table. Throughout the late 20th century, researchers encountered anomalies that tied the pattern together. Travel logs from covert flights were altered in perfect sequence, each deletion hiding a vanished civilian. Financial ledgers from humanitarian fronts concealed identical transfers, always preceding a disappearance. It was as though the agency had a secondary script, a parallel operation stripping names from existence. Those who studied this parallel script felt it tightening around them, an unseen noose woven from secrecy. There was the case of a linguist who traced code phrases across diplomatic cables sent from embassies abroad. He noticed a repeated expression meaning, remove the witness, disguised as routine security language. When he tried to publish his findings, he received an anonymous message warning him to forget the pattern. He ignored it, believing truth could protect him, but courage was no shield against institutional erasure. His apartment was found neatly arranged, untouched, yet he was gone, as though lifted out of his own life. Others encountered the pattern not through documents, but through human traces abruptly cut from reality. A filmmaker working on a documentary about intelligence overreach interviewed relatives of the missing. She learned they all reported similar signs: fear before disappearance, strange visits, phones tapped silently. She compiled her research into a locked hard drive, but during a late-night edit, the power flickered oddly. When light returned, her studio door stood open, her drive gone, and she never completed the project again. The deeper one followed the pattern, the more it felt like entering a labyrinth whose architect was unseen. It was a structure made not of walls but of absences, each missing person another corridor in the maze. Historians began referring to this phenomenon as the silent ledger, a ledger tallying lives erased quietly. This ledger revealed one truth: the disappeared were not random victims, but people crossing hidden borders. Borders defined not by geography or law, but by the private interests of the intelligence establishment. As Chapter 2 closes, the pattern becomes unmistakable. A system existed, operating beneath official reality. It was a system that did not punish with trials, but with annihilation of identity and memory itself. Those pulled into the silent ledger left faint echoes, warnings etched in whispers and unfinished research. And with each disappearance, the rhythm grew clearer, like distant drums heralding an approaching reckoning. The map of the vanished was expanding, and the shadows behind it were preparing to step further into view. Among the scattered survivors of this hidden era, a few witnesses attempted to speak before fear silenced them. They appeared in brief flashes across history, like distant lanterns flickering along a dark and forgotten road. Their accounts were partial, trembling, and often delivered in secret rooms where curtains never opened. Yet together they painted a portrait of an unseen mechanism operating beyond democratic oversight or law. And in their tremor-filled testimonies lay the first fragile outline of why people truly vanished. One such witness was a retired communications officer stationed abroad during the tense 1980s. He described encrypted directives that instructed field teams to track civilians nearing forbidden knowledge. The language was sterile, administrative, but its meaning chilled him. Protect interests, neutralize exposure. He believed neutralize meant intimidation until a colleague disappeared after questioning a similar order. Haunted by guilt, the officer whispered his story to a local reporter, then fled his home the very next week. Another witness emerged decades later, a former analyst from the Southwestern Intelligence Corridors. She explained that some cases were not violent but administrative, crafted through the machinery of paperwork. By altering employment records, travel logs, medical files, and digital identities, lives could be unraveled. She said the disappearance process took days, not months, leaving the target drifting without legal existence. Her hands trembled as she spoke, confessing she feared she had assisted in erasing more than a dozen victims. A third witness was a historian who stumbled upon letters exchanged among several vanished researchers. Their messages carried a shared dread, a sense of being watched by a presence lurking beyond known authority. He found references to a glass corridor, a metaphor describing how their private lives felt suddenly visible. When he attempted to publish his findings, he received a polite invitation to discuss national security issues. He returned from that meeting shaken, resigned from his post, and spent his remaining years in obscurity. Among all testimonies, one stood out: the account of a former field operative burdened by heavy conscience. He revealed that vanishing a person required no grand conspiracy, only coordinated silence across departments. A missing passport here, A broken database link there, and soon the world forgot the individual ever existed. He described the process as a quiet subtraction, a removal so elegant no alarm sounded in the system. Before he could reveal more, he disappeared himself, becoming the very victim of the method he exposed. As these fragile voices echoed through time, a chilling truth emerged with undeniable clarity and weight. The vanished were not enemies nor threats to national survival, but inconvenient holders of sensitive truths. Their curiosity, integrity, or simple misfortune brought them into collision with concealed strategic interests. The institutions involved remained faceless, preserved by layers of secrecy stretching across entire eras. And the witnesses who dared to speak found themselves illuminated by a dangerous, unblinking spotlight. The story deepened not with answers, but with shadows, each testimony a window into a deeper, buried chamber. Those who listened felt a growing dread that the disappearances were not rare events, but structural practice. The silent ledger introduced in earlier chapters now seemed larger, older, and meticulously maintained. Even today, historians suspect many gaps in public archives represent more names swallowed by the system. For the witnesses, telling the truth was a race against time, and time, it seems, was never on their side. By the turn of a new century, the machinery behind the disappearances evolved into something colder and quieter. Its operations no longer required distant battlegrounds or smoky embassies, but unfolded inside digital corridors. These corridors stretched across agencies, contractors, and silent partnerships hidden beneath patriotic slogans. Every step left a faint trace, yet these traces were scattered so widely that only the most persistent saw the pattern. And those who saw it risked stepping into the same invisible trap that swallowed countless others before them. One of the earliest cases of the digital era involved an engineer contracted to modernize encrypted satellites. He discovered classified logs showing targets marked not for surveillance, but for irreversible removal events. The language chilled him, suggesting the process of vanishing had become automated through coded protocols. He confided in a colleague, but within a fortnight, both men were reported missing from unrelated locations. Their work terminals were scrubbed clean, leaving only a strange ghost file titled Project Obedience. Another operation surfaced when a whistleblower leaked fragments of a program called Silent Horizon. It tracked civilians whose research intersected with legacy covert missions stretching back decades. The program assigned color-coded threat layers, yet the highest layer simply read extract with no definition. Investigators who later reviewed the leak noted familiar names on the list, including people long vanished. Within days of the leak, the whistleblower's apartment was discovered empty, as though life evaporated overnight. In the mid-years of the new century, private security firms became new instruments in these quiet operations. They operated under government contracts that shielded them from scrutiny by citing national safety concerns. Witnesses described unmarked teams conducting detain and disappear missions disguised as routine relocations. Targets were often civilians with no criminal history, only an unfortunate proximity to classified knowledge. Several contractors later admitted they never learned the full purpose of their assignments until it was too late. A particularly haunting case involved a university researcher studying psychological effects of interrogation. She found evidence that several historical subjects listed as deceased had in fact been quietly relocated. Her notes revealed patterns of fabricated death certificates, inconsistent burial records, and altered timelines. When she attempted to verify these anomalies, she received a coded message referencing her unpublished files. She vanished 1 week later, leaving behind a locked cabinet filled with documents no one dared to open. As these operations surfaced, historians began mapping them together like constellations in a darkened sky. Each operation was a star, faint alone but unmistakable when aligned into a larger constellation of secrecy. The pattern suggested not a series of isolated abuses, but a long-standing structure with deliberate continuity. From analog surveillance to digital extraction, the intent remained constant: silence those who crossed forbidden lines. And with each era, the methods grew more sophisticated, ensuring only fragments of truth escaped the shadows. By the end of this chapter in history, one truth had become painfully clear to those who dared to look. The disappearances were not artifacts of paranoia or myth, but calculated components of a hidden doctrine. This doctrine valued control above law, secrecy above transparency, and erasure above confrontation. The vanished became footnotes erased before publication, ghosts trapped between official narrative and reality. And behind every operation, unseen hands continued sharpening the tools of a system no map ever dared to show. History records what it can, but the story of the vanished ends in a place where records lose their voice. It ends in a corridor of hints, testimonies, and fragments that historians collect like broken shards of truth. Yet even these shards are dangerous, for each piece shows a reflection of a structure no one is meant to see. Those who follow these fragments feel a slow tightening, as though invisible eyes study every step they take. And somewhere in this narrowing silence lies the final secret of the people who crossed the agency's path. Researchers attempting to unify the cases found striking patterns repeating across entire generations. The disappearances spanned continents, political eras, and technological shifts with unsettling consistency. It was as if the mechanism behind them adapted endlessly, reshaping itself to match the world around it. From handwritten dossiers to encrypted databases, the system survived like a shadow learning to evolve. And those who approached the system's true core often felt a presence watching long before they vanished. A historian investigating mid-century disappearances reported receiving anonymous files late at night. The files contained detailed timelines, implying someone inside the machine wanted the truth discovered. Yet the historian vanished before releasing his findings, and the files dissolved from every digital archive. His final recorded words spoke of a chamber beyond secrecy, a phrase scholars debated for many years. Some believe he meant a literal vault. Others think it symbolized a boundary no witness survived crossing. In later decades, the clues grew stranger, as if the system itself was leaving warnings to those who searched. Declassified memos contained inconsistent signatures, suggesting more than one hand forged the documents. Archived testimonies included identical phrasing across decades, as if scripted by the same unseen author. Photographs of vanished individuals were subtly altered, with small details shifting in each archived copy. Historians who noticed these anomalies reported the sensation of studying a living intelligence, not a bureaucracy. One independent investigator traced a trail of erased identities to an abandoned military facility out west. He found hallways filled with empty filing cabinets, each drawer labeled with codes never used in public records. In the final room he entered, he discovered a single chair facing a wall painted entirely in reflective silver. His final journal entry said he heard footsteps behind him, though he was certain he entered the facility alone. The next day, his vehicle remained parked outside, but the investigator was never seen again by anyone. As the 21st century deepened, digital scholars attempted to rebuild the lost histories through algorithms. But each time they neared a breakthrough, unexplained data failures corrupted their progress without warning. Entire servers crashed, files unsynced, and encrypted storage keys vanished overnight without trace. Some believed these incidents were accidents. Others whispered they were modern tactics of the silent ledger. Regardless of the cause, every attempt to unmask the full truth ended in failure or sudden, chilling silence. And so the story stands today, incomplete, unfinished, suspended like a whisper in the national memory. No scholar has uncovered the full list of the vanished, and no official has acknowledged their existence. Those who search find doors that open only halfway, revealing shadows but never the figures casting them. The machinery that swallowed these people remains active, patiently waiting behind layers of law and secrecy. And those who walk too close to its edges feel a familiar dread, as if footsteps echo behind them softly. Perhaps the truth lies hidden in a vault still locked, or in testimonies buried beneath false identities. Perhaps someone inside the system still keeps a ledger, adding names in quiet rooms lit by flickering lamps. Or perhaps the truth moves freely, unseen, carried by those who vanished and now live in forced obscurity. Whatever the answer, one fact remains. History did not lose these people. They were taken deliberately. And until the last sealed corridor is open, their absence will haunt the world more loudly than their presence. The story ends here not because the truth is found, but because the path ahead is swallowed by shadow. Some endings close with certainty, but this one closes like a door hidden inside a deeper, unseen room. A room where silence thickens into something almost alive, guarding secrets no era has yet dared to reveal. And in that silent room, the vanished wait, names unspoken, lives unwritten, voices echoing in the dark forever.